Welcome to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. There are no traffic jams along the Extra Mile when you're studying for your bar exam. And now, your host, Jackson Mummy, owner of the Celebration Bar Review.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 265 of the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers. This is your host, Jackson Mummy. Really glad to be with you. Hope that those of you that took the July 2019 exams are coming down a little bit off of the adrenaline rush of the last few days. And for those of you who are just beginning to gear up for your exams in 2020, welcome. We're glad that you found us and we're glad that you're here. We come to you every week about this same time to talk about all things bar exam related. And you can find our podcast both in audio and video format. If you'd like to watch the video, you can do that by going to celebrationbarreview.com/265. That's the episode number. If you prefer to listen to the audio version, you can do it on what's now called Apple Podcasts, formerly iTunes Radio. You can check us out on radio.com, on Spotify, on iHeartRadio, lots of places where podcasts are syndicated. And we hope you'll do that one way or the other. And also just to remind you that all of our episodes are kept on our website at celebrationbarreview.com. In the case studies menu, you will see something called podcasts. So they're all there going back to episode number 1. Well, in today's episode, it's kind of a special, good episode, fun episode, I think. I invited two of our group coaches, Kelly and Amanda, to join me for a sort of a free-range discussion of the early feedback we've gotten, primarily focusing on California, the UBE, and Florida, a little bit of multi-state. And we wanted to just talk through what we were hearing in the first day or two after the exams were completed. I think it's an interesting look at what students are saying and what feedback we're getting, and obviously the opportunity to chat with a couple of our really talented group coaches and mentors about what they were hearing from students going into the exam, then the exams themselves and what happened. We'll talk about the subjects that were tested in those exams in California, Florida, and the UBE, talk a little bit about exam release dates, talk a lot about the California screw-up. There's no other way to describe it. Also, we talk a little bit about the question selection in Florida, which frankly was troubling to me and to Amanda and Kelly as well. So there were some interesting things that happened in this bar exam, and I encourage you to stick around for that conversation. Now, before we jump into the meat of today's podcast, I want to let you know that if you are taking the bar exam in 2020 or later, we have a free webinar for you. It's titled, Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. This is a look at the 4 steps that successful bar takers follow, step by step, and we use lots of case studies. We're adding some new case studies for you to hear from students in their own words. And we've got some great opportunities to let you in on their secrets. We'll share some of that information as well as make some great offers that I think you'll really want to take advantage of. Now, the webinar is totally free, but you do need to register in advance. And you can do that by going to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar or clicking on the webinar registration button on the show notes for the video or audio pages. The great part about this webinar is that it's designed to be watched at your convenience. So you pick the date and time, and then you can check out all of the information. And I think you're really going to find it helpful. So I hope you'll join us for Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. Well, this was certainly a controversial bar exam season so far in July of 2019. The experience in California was the worst, but certainly not the only example of, I think, a changing tableau for the bar. And we wanted to get in and talk about it in our first impressions. Now, we'll be talking more about this over the weeks and months to come, undoubtedly. But we wanted to give you a sense of what is going on right now. And so I invited Kelly Kildam and Amanda Miljenovic to join me. They are both staff members and work with our students around the country. And they're very talented, and they've got some great insights, I think, as to what's going on with the exam. So I'm not going to keep you waiting any longer. Let's go ahead and jump into that conversation about our July 2019 bar exam first impressions. Well, hey, everybody, welcome. We are here talking all things July 2019 bar exam, and I am joined by two of our group coaches, Kelly and Amanda. Hi, guys. How are you?
Hey, Jackson. Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm glad the exam's over. How you guys feeling about that?
Yes. Hello, hello.
Hey, Amanda.
Yes.
So, Amanda, we're doing a minivan conference with you today.
Absolutely. Hey, it's a SUV. No minivan yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Minivan is for Kelly. That's what's coming for you in
That's
your
right.
life.
That
Yeah,
is happening. That
there
is
you go.
happening.
For those of you that don't know, Kelly and Amanda serve as group coaches, among other functions, for our students and work with students leading up and through the exams. Kelly, many of you know, is my co-host on our weekly Q&A webinar. And both of you have been with us for a while now and been through the process and worked through all of this. And I thought it would be useful for our audience today to kind of get your hot takes. I said before we went live, we would be pundits here talking about, because this has been one of the craziest bar exam seasons ever. And I say that feeling a little bit like Chris Harrison on The Bachelor, you know, the craziest episode, the craziest season ever, most dramatic ending ever. But it really was that way. And I guess the place that we have to start is in California. And so I want to just briefly lay out a little bit of what happened for our audience and then just ask both of you for your insights. I know you were working and talking to California students in our course. But the essence of it is this. 5 days before the July exam, an email was, quote, inadvertently sent by the California bar examiners to the deans of 16 law schools in California, identifying the topics for the upcoming exam. That was on a Thursday. Late Saturday night, a very cryptic email went out from the California bar examiners, but it didn't look official. And it said, this had happened, and here are the 5 topics and the performance test subject that we're giving to everybody to level the playing field, even though we don't think anything wrong happened. Subsequently, all hell broke loose. Over 600 people withdrew from the California exam, got a full refund from the examiners. It turned out that the president of the California bar was excluded from the whole process, which seemed a little weird at the moment. And then we came to find out that her son is an applicant for the California July 2019 bar exam. So that's the rough outline of what happened. The exam went on, and it was, in fact, the topics that were on the list. So let me throw it out to both of you. What's your reaction when you heard this story? Amanda, what was your take?
I was blown away. I could not honestly believe it. I think I woke up, was it, I guess, Saturday, and, you know, you had sent us an email about it, and I was all over the news, and I just think it's really unfair, and I think it's really unfortunate. And I also think that there's absolutely no way that, you know, as hard and as tight as these bar exams and essay topics are locked down, that this was an accident. So I just think it was really unfair to the students who, you know, whether they received it on Thursday, those deans, who knows what the deans did with them. You know, ethically, they should have done nothing with them, but we don't know that. And I think Saturday was, you know, just a quick stab at trying to make things right by the California bar. And I'm not even sure that you could make that right, you know? So,
yeah, I really, I agree with you. I think it was unfair. The email that went out at 9:30 p.m. Pacific time, Saturday night, was from someone that no one had ever heard of. It didn't appear, it actually, the first thought that I had, and the first thought a lot of people had, was that it was a hoax, that someone had simply gotten into the database and was doing this. And it took until probably late in the afternoon on Sunday for this to be verified by the California bar examiners, which was strange. So at that point, we've now lost almost 4 days in this moment. So that was very weird. Kelly, what's your thoughts?
I thought it was very irresponsible. I mean, a lot of people put in so much time and money into this experience, let alone the stress and the little things you have to give up along the way, you know, taking time off, all of those things. And for it to just be like popping this balloon, right? Popping this person's hopes of just like, I'm going to get a fair shot at this. I worked really hard. Everyone's going in there on an even playing field. We don't know what the topics are going to be. And then to realize like, this is going to be really uneven no matter how they try to fix this. there's going to be someone who knew the topics before. I was just completely amazed, just like Amanda. I mean, I just think it's really unfortunate, and especially having been a bar taker several times.
Same here.
This would have completely, I would have tried really hard not to be angry going in, but I think it would have made me really angry, just because of how hard I know I worked to get there, much less trying to beat a 30% pass rate on top of that.
That's a big deal, right? You start with this, you start with this bad pass rate, and I got some pushback after I did my initial emergency podcast. I had some people that said, well, I'm going to go take the exam, and why are you picking on the 16 schools? And I'm like, well, I'm not really picking on the 16 schools. I'm simply pointing out that there's 62 schools in California, or maybe it's 72. It's some crazy number.
There's a lot.
And only 16 were invited to see the grading, which is unfair to start with.
Right.
And then on top of that, most of these schools were underperforming, state accredited or unaccredited, correspondence schools. If I'm the dean of one of those schools that is in danger of losing accreditation or losing my job because of the bar pass rates, and I get this treasure trove of information 5 days before the exam, it is very hard to imagine that I just folded that up and put it in my desk, right?
Right.
And I think that the reality here is that when we get to that stage of people being under that much pressure, to then say, well, let's just assume that it's all fair, and then some people go in with perhaps a 3-4 day head start, that can't possibly feel good. As you were talking to students, what were you hearing back? Anything? I mean, I know a lot of people had their heads down and were working. Did it have an impact as you heard it around the country?
I think that people were angry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's the feedback that I got, that they were pretty angry that this would happen, that, smooth sailing, they're in their last few days of review, and then to realize that students, could have had an advantage over them for 4 more days. That's a lot when you're talking about bar time and crunch time with the exam. 4 days feels like an eternity. And so I think that people just had a real air of anger about them. And, as far as I know, they went in there and tried to crush it as best they could.
Yeah. Yeah. Kelly,
I think on the last group call that I had 2 California students, the one that you were on, Jackson.
Yeah.
And they were honestly surprisingly calm for the most part. And we're just ready. I mean, obviously some of them had to fly to get there. They were already there. This drama was just kind of unfolding. And they just wanted to go and do it, And I tried to lighten the mood with them and joke with them. I had a con law professor who at the beginning of the term said, even if I told you guys the exact topics for the essays for the final right now, no one in here, not everyone's going to get an A. It's all about your focus and your training and, your commitment to this class. And I kind of tried to share that with them. Like, this doesn't take away all the time and effort that you've put in already. Right. Even though everyone now knows all of the topics, it doesn't mean everyone is still going to pass. They still have to put in the effort. They still have to have time management, stress management, and we've given you kind of all these tools. So
exactly.
Try to kind of do a little pep talk there, but it's true. It's it's hard, but they seem to go in calm.
Yeah. One thing I will say, and this is not a pat me on the back kind of thing, but I did a video a week before in which I talked about what I thought the probabilities were for different topics being tested on the exam. I'm not claiming to be Nostradamus, but I had almost all of the subjects on my list. So if students have been following our general thought pattern, there weren't a whole lot of surprises, although they did a very weird thing in California, as they often do. One of the questions was remedies and constitutional law, and that's a very strange combination. I'm anxious to see that question, to see what they decided to do with that. But for those that don't know, the topics were civil procedure, and then remedies, constitutional law. The third topic was criminal law and procedure, the fourth was ethics, the fifth was contracts, and then the performance test was an objective memo in the area of evidence. So what was in the email turned out to be what they in fact tested. The California Supreme Court is now beginning an independent investigation of what happened. The examiners had the option to postpone the exam or put in new questions. They chose not to do any of those things. They basically said, well, we really apologize, and we don't think anything wrong actually happened. No one ever did anything, and we needed to have all of this information go out to schools because we want them to come and see how we grade, and they needed expertise. And to be honest, my thought about this was, wait a minute, how much expertise do you need to analyze a criminal law question or an ethics question or a contracts question or a civil procedure question? When you're the dean of a law school, you don't know those topics? Give me a break. So
Yeah.
it was not a pretty picture at all. Was there any feedback anywhere else in the country about sort of the sense of, did this have an impact on other exams? Did you hear about it from students in other jurisdictions?
No, I didn't hear anything in connection with California for other students. I mean, obviously our students had sympathy for the California students, especially if they had been in group coaching with them, because they knew that it was not fair and that they were going to have a different experience than them. But I mean, I did hear several things. I did see several things on the Facebook page of just delays and all of those things, but those are pretty natural. I don't think those were connected to California at all.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah.
Cool.
I mean, I would agree. I didn't hear much about California from our other students until after the exam. And I, of course, didn't want to bring it up or worry them about it at all in other jurisdictions. And so I didn't hear much talk or feedback until after the fact, and really just, bewilderment. People are so shocked that this could even happen, or that that this did happen. So I like to hear that, though, because that means the students in our other jurisdictions were very focused on those jurisdictions and what's in front of them. And at that time, that's what you have to be worried about. And they, then make comments about it after the fact. So.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think that, frankly, that's kind of a compliment to you guys in the group coaching. We've got several group coaches that work with our students, and everybody seemed to be pretty focused on, making sure everybody was ready. So that's what we know in California at this moment. Results will come out November 15th. I would say anyone that had planned to take the July exam that withdrew, we offered our students a free deferral if they had withdrawn from that exam. But if you are someone who had planned to take that exam and stopped, you should continue on with your studies. We'd love to talk with you if you're not one of our students, and talk about how we can help you. And certainly we've got lots of people getting ready for the February 2020 exam. What the implications will be of this on that exam, obviously no way to know at this moment. So that's California. Stay tuned. It's a crazy situation. So. I think the next topic, or the next state, let's talk about UBE, because frankly, if you were a California student, you might be thinking to yourself, maybe I should be taking UBE these days.
Yes.
And not be taking California.
Yes.
So let's just start with any general reactions that you guys got from UBE students, either right before the exam or afterwards. Anything that jumped out in your minds?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't have really anything that jumped out too much. A lot of delays. That's really all I heard from UBE students, but that happens. I mean, when I sat in South Carolina, I think we were a half hour behind. So, that happens a lot, just with people going back and forth to their cars, bringing things to the door and then being, turned away that, you can't bring certain things in, and per jurisdiction and things like that. But I didn't really hear too much chatter on, bad things happening. So it seemed very good. I got a lot of really good feedback after the exam from a lot of our UBE takers, where the photo reading really tripped people out. So I always like to hear that. And of course, if you're not in our course, you may not be familiar with what photo reading is, but it is a really helpful tool and can also serves as a great study tool, but can also serve as a good tool to really make the rest of the bar takers around you uneasy a little bit. So that a little bit of the added just it gives you a good laugh during the exam. So I got some good feedback from a few students that used photo reading during the exam, and it kind of just made them laugh because their table mates were a little bit uneasy. And so that was good feedback though, because they were photo reading using it, and then they felt like they got really good results from it and got a little bit of a laugh and made them a little bit more prepared and calm. So
good. Kelly, did you hear anything?
I heard that the topics were not that bad. I mean, I didn't hear anything from our students that the topics that were tested were that difficult. They stuck with the FLA format. I usually hear a lot more about the MPTs. Yeah. But I didn't hear anything, if they were difficult, if they weren't, if any time issues. I just didn't hear anything. So I don't know if they were just very straightforward or what.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about what we've gotten in the way of feedback from students. And remember that when we talk about these things, other than Florida, where we actually have the text of the questions, we are relying on the very first comments coming off of people coming out of the room. There are two performance tests in the MPT. The first performance test was a persuasive document to a legal audience. This one was interesting. It was international law and the Hague Convention. I don't know. Civil procedure. Yeah, I mean, Kelly, you would have been all over that. But the rest of us, the Hague Convention, I don't know. But that was the persuasive document, and the objective document, which was the second performance test, was estate planning. It was sort of give us a memo on the pros and cons of these different strategies that the client might take under advisement. That is what we had indicated that we thought would happen. The one thing I thought might happen on this exam that did not is I thought we might have a drafting MPT.
Right.
Yeah.
And that did not occur. So that's probably good news, but pretty straightforward. The objective task and the persuasive task, both to legal audiences. So that was good. In terms of the essays on the UBE, there are 6 essays. They're a half hour each. And I don't know the order of the questions. I apologize for this, but I know the subjects. If you guys know the orders, feel free to correct me. But there was a family law, constitutional law, at least as it's being described as us, crossover. This dealt with custody, and it was a vaccination case. Take that, Marianne Williamson. It was the husband had a spousal support question. Apparently the husband was asking for spousal support. And the con law piece was a mandatory vaccination. So that was one of the questions. Got a lot of comments about that question. So that was the deal there. Another question was in criminal law. This was apparently a pretty straightforward Fifth and Sixth Amendment question, had to do with Miranda rights and waiver of rights. I didn't get much reaction to this question. Seemed like people thought, as Kelly said, pretty straightforward and didn't get a lot of reaction. There was a civil procedure question. I do think this was the last of the questions, question number 6, and this one I did hear about from a lot of students already. It was a class action and subject matter jurisdiction. There were parties that engaged in 3 different states in a class action and a question about damages. And this one, I don't know. Did you guys hear anything about this particular one? Because it got some reaction from my students. No?
I didn't. That's what I mean. I didn't hear anything specifically about these.
All right. Amanda, did you hear anything?
No, I didn't hear anything specific, that anyone got thrown a bunch of curveballs. Everybody at my collective group seemed to be very upbeat and didn't seem like anything was too shocking to them, which is good. I think that speaks to how prepared they were.
Yeah, that's good. I like that. All right. So moving on to the list, the next question was decedents' estates or wills. And this had to do with a holographic will. Apparently parties that lived in different states from where they were writing the will also had some child custody and some exclusion of heirs. So, it sounds like a pretty mainstream wills question. Holographic wills is certainly not a surprising topic. The 5th question, don't know if it was in this order, but the 5th question I've got on my list is corporations. This had to do with the fiduciary duty of corporate officers and directors, had to do with self-dealing. Again, it sounded like, from most of the feedback I've heard in the first few hours after the exam, a very straightforward question, no surprises, no tricks in the question, and people felt pretty good about that. And then the last question, the last of the 6 topics, was in contracts, and it had a lot of damages focused to it. Now, remedies and damages are not a separate topic in the UBE, but this question seemed to deal with the damages aspects of contracts, expectation damages, consequential damages, a duty to mitigate damages, some of that kind of information. So it didn't seem to be so much about the formation of a contract or necessarily even the breach of the contract, but more about the remedies in the contract. So that's what we saw in terms of subject matter. One of the things that was interesting to me was, again, I was pretty close on my anticipated subjects for this exam. I'm looking desperately at my list here to see what I did, but I was pretty much on. I called the contracts question and the con law question. Let's see, what else did I do here? Civ Pro, yeah, I got that one. I said family law, and yeah, that was there. And I said decedents of states, yeah, okay. And I said corporations. Well, there you go.
You can't tell people you got them right, Jackson, and then next time say that they're just predictions.
Are you
Exactly.
thinking that
You're going to get that reputation again that you had before? We had to change them to just
No.
predictions.
I know, this is really bad. I got to stop doing that, man. I really got to stop doing that. But
I don't want you to mess up. I mean, our
Yeah,
students
yeah.
really appreciate it, but
Exactly.
we might
Yeah.
need to make up a new word besides predictions.
What-
Highly probable.
like a likelihood, I use the likelihood
Statistically
scale.
likely.
Yeah, so there you go.
Something like that.
Yeah, so we're going to see results will start coming in the UBE jurisdictions. Of course, it runs the gamut. We will get some early results in early September. The big states like New York, we would expect to be late September, maybe early October, but typically they've been getting faster and faster, so late September there. We had some new jurisdictions, your old stomping grounds, Kelly, of Maryland.
Yeah.
They're going to come out November 1st. We've got New Mexico, second week of September. We've got, each state does their own, even though it's the UBE. So we will keep informed on that, but we'll get a few early states. And that's always important to us because that will tell us what the multi-state looked like. And we're going to talk about multi-state in a minute as well, but that will give us a sense of where the exam is going before we get the big results. The first big state to come out will be Florida. So any other thoughts about UBE? Anything else that jumped out at either of you?
I really liked that it seemed pretty straightforward for our students, at least, right? So that was really good. I think that UBE, everybody really hates on it a lot. And to me, it was a blessing. So I also think that it being so straightforward and the UBE being so uniform, as the first word presents, really is doing a good service to our students and other students throughout the country. So I'm glad to see it was pretty straightforward this time.
Yeah, I agree, Amanda. I think it was a really fair test from everything I'm hearing. So, Kelly, you got any other thoughts about UBE?
No, I mean, I definitely agree with Amanda. I'm very anxious now. Once you get to the other side, I always immediately think of the students and, oh, when's so-and-so getting their results and when is this coming out and all of that. So I'm already kind of in pre-celebration mode, ready for good news and interviews and all of that. I like those.
Yeah, good. I agree. I think that's definitely one of the things you want to do. I did hear nice things about the bar examiners in DC, heard some good things about some of the New York locations, heard some good things about New Mexico, which we usually do. All seem to be pretty good jurisdictions. Heard some nice things about Alabama. Amanda, your old stomping grounds in South Carolina, they seem to manage to get through the exam pretty well. So that's always
They're pretty efficient.
Yeah, they are.
I've taken North Carolina as well, and North Carolina seems to stress you out a little bit more, me anyways. Even if they're not trying to, North Carolina is very, I don't know, very strict. I mean, South Carolina's strict too with what you can take in the exam. They just seem to be friendlier. So that's always a plus when you're that stressed out.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting with some of these new states like Maryland and Illinois that have not been doing UBE, where that's going. Obviously, Texas will be the next big state jumping to the UBE in 2021. As a result, part of our strategy for Texas students was to say, don't take the Texas bar exam in this exam in July 2019 or in 2020. Go take the UBE. We did a video about that. We had very few students actually sitting for the Texas exam per se, because we didn't think that, the last dying gasps of a state exam are not exactly where you want to be. Yeah. So I don't have much to say about Texas. I haven't heard a whole lot. There's nothing to predict or any likelihood of questions typically, but as we get some information back from our Texas students, we'll share that in upcoming episodes. Well, that takes us then to the next big state we've got, which is Florida. And Florida, as always, is an interesting jurisdiction. You never quite know what they're going to do in Florida, except to make your life miserable. So I just start with that as my fundamental premise is, what's up with these guys? But here's what was tested in Florida, and then we'll get to your comments and thoughts, both Kelly and Amanda. The first essay of the day was a very weird, long question in Florida con law and ethics, having to do with mandatory tattoos and body piercings. I don't even know what to say about this. It was the PATAPA that they created. It was the Protections Against Tattoos and Piercings Act. There you go. In any event, the question dealt with sort of the implications of mandatory counseling, which frankly I thought it was a proxy for an abortion question, and that I did not like that. I don't know. Did either of you have a sense of that? Did you hear anything from students about that it felt like there was a stand-in for abortion and mandatory counseling?
I didn't hear anything I only had one Florida student this time, and I didn't hear anything back from them about their thoughts on it.
Yeah, I only had one Florida student as well that I consistently worked with. They just thought overall that they were kind of crazy questions and come out of left field, which is typical for Florida too. So
It is. And of course, just to be clear, we have another group coach, Evelyn, who worked with most of our Florida students.
Yeah.
And for some reason, she has a very bad headache today, which is not hard to believe. But we'll try and get Evelyn on in a separate episode and just talk more about the Florida questions. But this first question was a weird one. And of course, ethics, the ethics part had to do with prior representation. The question assumes that you have prior representation with a tattoo parlor, representation of tattoo establishments. So I don't know. It was a weird question. Anyway, so that was question number one. I thought that was strange, but then we got to question number two, which was a property question. And normally property, not my favorite, but it's manageable. But this one, holy cow, what a bear. This question had to do with residential real estate that is sold by one party to another in a private sale and a private mortgage, and then the subsequent purchaser decides to move and gives the house away to a relative, and then the relative rents to a tenant, and the tenant does bad things, and then and then of course the payments stop getting made on the mortgage. And then there's some stuff about boat rides because they share a lake, and there's some easement on the lake. It was nuts. It really was nuts. So I'll just read you the call of the question. Here's the call that the examiners gave in Florida. Sal now wants to sue for damages, foreclosure on the house, kick Tara out, Tara, and terminate Nancy's ability to use the pond. What? You can't make it. Well, you can make stuff up like this.
They do.
Yeah. So I was not, that was nuts. I mean, really, it's just a stupid question. I'm sorry. If you're going to ask a property question, ask a property question. But sometimes I think that these bar examiners are just trying to, pat themselves on the back for how clever they are and how many weird things they can come up with in a single question. And if I sound a little jaded, I guess after 30 years, sometimes I just get fed up. I mean, it's just, I don't know if it's a fair question or not. After our staff gets in and starts writing the answers, we'll look at it. Yeah. But man, there's a lot of stuff going on in this question. For a 1-hour essay, I thought it was brutal. So there you go.
It's very and then. It's very like and then this happens, and then this, and then that. But if you keep them separate, hopefully our students didn't get too messed up by that.
Yeah, and part of the feedback I got was that our students felt like they were able to break it down, write about it in turn, and they were less upset about it than I was, to be honest. Yeah. So I don't know. I think I'm just getting crabby in my own way.
Well, it's just aggravating when you see like, oh, why did they, like, really? I think that's our perception, right? But for the students, it's like, okay, like you said, I'm going to take this chunk and take this chunk and take this chunk and then go with it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So there you go. So then we get to question 3. Oh, Lord. Sometimes I don't even know what to tell you. Question 3, I said in my preview video, I think there is a point in time which the Florida bar examiners will decide to test evidence in an essay. And everybody goes, oh, Jackson, come on, man, that isn't going to happen. They haven't done that ever. It's not going to happen. So what happened? Well, they tested evidence along with criminal law. Now, those are 2 subjects that Florida has not tested as essays. I mean, criminal law now has popped up a couple times, but evidence? Criminal. Are you kidding me? Right. And this question had to do with statutory rape, which I thought was an odd choice again, in the same way that I sort of felt like the tattoo parlor was a proxy. I am really surprised that the examiners would pick a subject that could be a trigger subject. And this was I understand when you're dealing with criminal law, you're going to inevitably get to some things that could be that. But of all the subjects that you could take, the rape of a 15-year-old, particularly in light of the Jeffrey Epstein stuff, strike me as being very, very odd. So I was not excited about this or happy about it. But then the evidence part of it had some hearsay questions. There were actually 5 calls of the question here. Wow. And they wanted you to discuss whether or not there was a statutory rape. And then they wanted to deal with the hearsay objections to testimony. Then there was an introduction of a part of text messages. And so you've got evidentiary, questions there. And then there was a motion to exclude the witness from the courtroom during the police officer's testimony. So all of those evidentiary, the rule of rights of witnesses and so on. And then they said, if the court grants a mistrial, what's the effect of double jeopardy? Right? So head exploding. I don't know. That was the 3rd question. So
yeah. They try to run you down in Florida. I mean, they really do. It's the first section of the day. They want you to be drained by the afternoon. I mean, honestly, to me, that's where all the marbles were for the exam. Just those first 3 hours, if you didn't do well in those first 3 hours, it doesn't really matter how well you do it in the afternoon. So it's not surprising to me, having been through their process before, that they just keep throwing things out like that to knock you off your game. So
yeah, Amanda, you're a fan. You're a fan of the Florida bar examiners, I know.
Yeah. So I have never sat in Florida, but I went to law school in Florida. And I took a look at sitting in Florida after taking North Carolina a few times. And to be honest, the essays made me stay away. And to me, that last essay is inflammatory, just in general. And I'm shocked, right? I'm just shocked. I want to say nothing shocks me anymore with Florida, but then they do this. So I just think it's inflammatory. And if you're really testing students' ability to analyze things in a time crunch, and if they have been studying their rule of law and Florida laws, then you don't need a statutory rape question to test it.
I agree. And I appreciate you saying that. I was deeply offended by that. And I think I was also offended that they would have this obscure, tattoo thing that just mirrors the rule on abortion counseling and requirements before you can get an abortion. And it's, before you can get a tattoo. And they just substituted the word tattoo for abortion. It's an abortion question. And I don't know what's going on. Either the Florida examiners have decided that it's a gotcha game, or there's politics involved or something else.
Yeah, well, to me, you would think they want to be as neutral and baseline as possible with subjects that they test, just because you don't want any, you don't want that feel in Florida for any kind of inflammatory testing to throw their students off completely, because, it really could trigger some people. And abortion is such a hot topic. You certainly don't want to test people with abortion essays. So I think you're right. I didn't like the way the question read either, with the tattoo parlor, and the statutory rape, I think, was just way over the top, even for Florida. So it's just interesting to me. But then again, I've never sat in that jurisdiction. But I just think it's a little bit unfair to the students who, are busting their butt to study and do all of these things. And, that could throw you off. That could throw you off your game immediately. And I think that with our course, we try to prepare everybody for everything. And so I think that if anybody, our students were calm during that. But there was a lot of that probably wouldn't be. So interesting.
Yeah.
I think that's the whole point, was to throw people off. Agreed. I really do. Yeah. I mean, I think they wanted to see, most of the time when I was taking it, they wanted to see how you'd be under pressure, how you'd be under kind of an emotional strain, a shock. And see how you do, because, right or wrong, when you're going to practice, you're going to be under emotional strain and stress, but Agreed. It's a little much.
Yeah. A little much. Yeah. So when it came to the likelihood, the predictions, I thought it was a high likelihood of a property essay. I thought it was a high likelihood of a Florida con law essay. I thought relatively low likelihood of crim. I got to admit, they surprised me about that. I thought that there was a high likelihood of ethics, and of course there was. And then I thought evidence was a possibility. So again, I got to say, my advanced prediction ability seemed to be on target.
Where was the ethics part? Where was the ethics part?
It was in the first question in con law, where they wanted to know if you were, because you had represented tattoo establishments before. And I also think there was some sunshine stuff going on there. We'll see what they think about that. But several of the Florida senators in the question meet at a cocktail party and discuss the legislation privately. So I'm pretty sure that's a sunshine violation. So we'll see.
Gotcha.
So then the multiple choice questions in Florida, civil and criminal procedure as always, and then evidence and wills. I will say I thought business entities would be there instead of wills, but other than that, pretty straightforward. And as always, the feedback was Florida multiple choice may be the worst written multiple choice questions on the planet. So there you go. Lovely group. All right, so that's what we know there. As I said, Texas, we don't have much information yet. Georgia, we don't have much information. To be honest, in Georgia, what happens is the examiners frighten the applicants initially by saying you can't share anything. It's not actually true. So it takes a few minutes, a day or two, for Georgia applicants to come off of the fear factor and start sharing what they heard and saw. So we will come back to you with that, but that usually takes us a bit longer for them to go, oh, they're not going to throw me out if I actually tell you what was on the exam. So it's always interesting. You got to say, the world of the bar is certainly interesting. On the multi-state, let's open it up here. Did you guys hear much about multi-state, or what were your students talking about there? Amanda, anything?
Yeah, so I heard the multi-state was exactly what they expected. So a lot like the practice essays that they've been doing. So that was good to hear. And then I also heard, just in a practical manner, that most of my students studied with about an hour to an hour and a half, left of each session. So I felt really good about that, and they felt really good about it. No curveballs that I heard of that were so outlandish or that stopped them in their tracks. And that's usually what they notice, at least what I've been picking up, is they notice the questions that stop them in their tracks, take them, throw them off of their, the way that we use, with the photo reading and, using your intuition to study and to also test. Nothing really stopped them in their tracks and threw them so far off their game that they couldn't just keep on going. So a lot of my students, you know, texted me after the exam, like, hey, I finished an hour and a half early, which is just phenomenal and really put them at next level. So I heard good things.
Good. Kelly, did you hear anything?
I didn't hear anything specifically. I think that most of the students that I had worked with personal coaching is mainly the essay day that they were concerned about. And then after that, it was kind of just downhill, not in a bad way, but just, you know, riding the bike up the hill and then kind of streaming, you know, flowing back down. So yeah, I didn't hear anything that stuck out. I didn't hear anything that particularly slowed them down.
Good. I think that one of the comments that I got from people was that, you know, with 25 evaluation questions spread out throughout the test, sometimes there were questions on the MBE that seemed weird, but people seemed to be able to distinguish the weird questions pretty easily. There was one about tribal rights, for example. It just seemed like it was an odd question, and people went, yeah, okay, that's so off the wall that it probably is an evaluation question. As Amanda said, they didn't get stuck on it, which I thought was the real key. Me too. You know, nobody comes out of the MBE saying it's easy. However, as we have moved more to photo reading and mind maps and selective intuition, we are seeing across the board what Amanda described, people finishing 100 questions in 2 hours or less. And feeling very good and very confident and very comfortable about that. I know that's unnerving to other people in the room. I suspect more than one of our students was asked if they were trying to quit. In fact, they were just done. So I think that's a good thing for our students, and you know, something that we feel pretty good about the overall sense. You know, multi-state is multi-state. It's always miserable, and you know, there you go, and we'll see what happens. Again, we will get some early readouts on the multi-state when those first results come out. And speaking of result states, I didn't give the result state for Florida. That's coming out September 16th. So that'll be the first of the big states coming out. California, November 15th. You know, New York, as I say, end of September probably. Same for, and I would expect the same for a lot of the UBE states like New Jersey and Illinois and some others. So we'll keep everybody informed on that. Well,
I think North Carolina is the first jurisdiction.
Is it? Yeah, they are early, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah, usually it's a 4-week turnaround. So even with what I've been seeing with UBE the last year, they're about 4 or 5 weeks. So I would say we'd have their stuff by the 1st of September.
Yeah, that would be interesting,
First week. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
All right. So there you go. Making my notes here because, you know, I never like to miss those things. Okay. Well, good.
Don't let us miss them. We'll get those. We'll get the calls.
Yeah, we will. So if you're taking the bar exam in February 2020, it's not too early to begin your studies. In fact, you should begin now. If you are waiting for your results from July 2019, in general, we would say wait till the results come out, but be ready to move as soon as the results come. If you're not successful, you can jump back in and start your studies. If you studied with someone other than Celebration Bar Review, you should check us out in this interim period and make some decisions about the direction you want to go. We continue to outperform the state averages pretty significantly. And I think we're going to see some, I can't even begin to understand what we're going to see in California. I think we could be looking at a spectacular failure there. But outside of that, I think that, you know, people will want to jump back in, get into the exams as fast as they can. Really encourage, if you're a Texas bar taker, go to the UBE. If you're a California or a Florida bar taker and you can sit somewhere else, go to the UBE. If you're a foreign trained attorney and you think you're going to come to California, don't. Go to New York and take the UBE. Stay out of California. It's a bad state right now. And, you know, we got lots of California students, but most of them are the people that are stuck in California, can't take the exam anywhere else. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. Well, I want to thank both of you, as always. Kelly, I know you did a lot of mentoring as well as group coaching, and co-hosting me every week.
Yeah,
it's kind of nice to get a break now, isn't it?
It's so nice. It's so nice. I want to thank Amanda and Evelyn. You guys have been amazing, kind of taking over the group coaching aspect so that I can kind of move to the personal mentoring and cooking a human. So I'm very thankful to you guys. We'll be leaning on you definitely in the next couple of months as well.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've enjoyed it. I have my Thursday nights back though, which is nice.
Yeah.
But you know, this is the fun part though. After it's all said and done with group coaching, now we get to wait, hurry up and wait. And so I can't wait for all those exciting phone calls that say, hey, I passed, or hey, I did this. And Jackson, I wanted to touch on, moving jurisdictions. If there's anyone out there that is struggling with the state that they're in and it has a state specific component, take a look at moving to a UBE state. I did it and it changed my life. I took the bar 9 times, 8 times in North Carolina and once in South Carolina when they switched to the UBE. And it wasn't the path that I thought I needed to be on, but it was a different path and it worked. And so I would really encourage people to do your research or reach out to us at CBR to, put you on a different path, because sometimes to get to the end, we just need to take a different route. So I would definitely consider it, with what Jackson was saying. It worked for me.
Yeah, and folks, in case you don't know it, Amanda's very successful at what she's doing, and we're very proud of you and Kelly and Evelyn and everybody that's in our course. But the number of stories that we've got now of people leaving Florida, Georgia, California, Texas, going to the UBE, or North Carolina, before it went UBE, and going to the UBE and being successful on the exam is one thing, but the success that those individuals are having as members of the bar is the most uplifting part of all of this. In a crazy world, in a world where I think the challenge to pass the bar is greater than it's ever been, my goal is to just get you over the line. If we can just get you over the line and get you a seat at the table, that's a big deal. And that's what we're here to do. And everybody on the team is I think, very much part of that. And so I want to thank you guys, certainly Kelly and Amanda for being here today, but Evelyn, who is our Florida mentor, our editors, our senior editor, Megan, who works mostly with the California students. We really appreciate all of the work that goes in from everybody. And, as results come out over the next month or two, we'll keep everybody informed. We'll come back. Maybe we'll reconvene this group and see what we think as results come out. And for those of you that took the exam, get on with your lives now. Take some time, go do the things that you want to do. The results will be here soon enough, and then we'll deal with them. So I just want to thank both of you guys. Amanda, thank you so much for being here, and in the SUV, appreciate that, and look forward to working with you again. And Kelly, certainly look forward to working with you. And I know the baby baking is continuing on, and yes, so I think we might see a little less of you for a while, but I have no doubt that you'll be back. So, but thanks both of you, and we're really glad to have you here. And to our audience, thanks for being with us today. And we're going to sign off, and we'll be back to you again next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye. That's our episode for this week. I hope you found it interesting and helpful. If you took the July 2019 exams, I know it's tough to come down from those, and hopefully you're beginning to feel like you're coming back to something that looks like normal. If you did not take the exams and you're planning on taking the exams in 2020, I think it's helpful to get a sense of what's going on, certainly in those states and jurisdictions, but also to get a feeling for the general I think the general lay of the land, what's going on, and the trends and tendencies right now. So hope that was helpful for everyone. I do want to remind you before we sign off today that if you're taking the exam in 2020 or later, we'd love to have you join us for our free webinar, Do Something Different, Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. You can watch this webinar at the date and time of your choosing, but you do need to register in advance. So make sure you hop on the show notes page, click on the button there, or go to celebrationbarreview.com/webinar and make sure you get registered, and we'll see you on that webinar. All right, well, I hope everybody's doing well. Hope you have a great week and get back into the rhythm. If you were taking the July 2019 exam, get back into the rhythm of life. If you were taking the February or July 2020 exams, it's time to get started. And we'll be back next week to talk more about what you need to do there. And again, thanks everybody for being with us. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Extra Mile podcast for bar exam takers at www.celebrationbarreview.com.